The bus rumbled over the dirt road, kicking up dust as it wound its way through the thick green of the African countryside. Inside, the group of NYSC members sat in various states of exhaustion and boredom, their white and green uniforms already stained from the long journey. Chidi leaned against the window, watching the endless trees and clusters of mud brick houses pass by. His expression was unreadable, though his fingers tapped impatiently on his knee. Beside him, Sigan stretched his long legs with a sigh, adjusting his cap. "This place looks abandoned," Sigan muttered, nudging Chidi. Chidi snorted. "Not abandoned, just forgotten by time." Across the aisle, Amaka, a petite woman with dark skin and intelligent eyes, gave them both a warning look. "You two should be careful with your words. This is someone's home." Sigan raised his hands in surrender. "Now you sabi. I just dey talk my mind." The bus jolted suddenly, throwing everyone forward as it came to an abrupt stop. The driver, a middle-aged man with a thick accent, turned to address them. "We done reach," he announced gruffly. The NYSC members groaned and stretched, grabbing their bags before stepping down. The village of Umuchi was quiet, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and distant smoke from cooking fires. Small children peeked out from behind mud huts, their curious eyes watching the new arrivals. A man stepped forward to greet them. His skin was deep brown, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. He wore a simple wrapper around his waist, the string of beads around his neck. This was Baba Okon, the village's spiritual elder. "Welcome," he said in a voice as steady as the roots of an ancient tree. "You are guests in our land. Respect it, and it will respect you." The coppers exchanged glances before muttering their greetings. Baba Okon's gaze lingered on Chidi for a moment longer than necessary before he finally turned. "Follow me." The group was led to a small clearing where simple huts had been prepared for them. Women emerged, offering them bowls of water to wash their faces, while young boys carried their luggage. Chidi, unimpressed, threw his bag onto the bamboo bed inside his assigned hut. "This is where we'll be staying for the next year." "It's better than I expected," Amaka said, wiping her forehead. "Simple but clean." Chidi scoffed. "I was expecting something a bit more modern." Later that evening, the villagers gathered to welcome the newcomers with a feast. Drummers beat out hypnotic rhythms, and women with elaborately braided hair danced in the firelight, their colorful wrappers swaying to the music. The coppers clapped along, some even joining the dance. As the night wore on, Baba Okon stepped forward, raising a hand. The music stopped, and the villagers turned toward him with reverence. "Our ancestors watch over us," he began. "They guide us, protect us, and punish those who disrespect their ways." The villagers murmured in agreement. Baba Okon gestured toward a small shrine at the far end of the clearing. Within its carved wooden doors sat an idol, the golden figure, no taller than a child's forearm, glowing in the firelight. "This is the heart of Umuchi," Baba Okon said. "Our ancestors placed it here generations ago. It brings us prosperity, health, and peace." Chidi leaned toward Sigan, whispering, "That thing must be worth millions." Sigan chuckled. "If only we could get it to Lagos." Baba Okon's gaze snapped to them, his sharp eyes pinning them in place. "This idol is not to be touched. It is sacred. Those who seek to take what is not theirs will pay a terrible price." Chidi forced a smile. "Of course, Baba." But as the old man turned back to the villagers, Chidi's mind was already working. A golden idol. Riches beyond measure. The villagers wouldn't know what to do with that kind of money. What harm would it do to take it? That night, as the village settled into sleep, Chidi called Sigan and turned to his hut. The flickering flame of a kerosene lantern cast long shadows on the mud walls. "I have a plan," Chidi said, his voice low. "That idol. We are taking it." Sigan frowned. Are you mad? Did you not hear Baba Okon? Chidi rolled his eyes. Old men like that always use fear to keep people in check. There's no curse, Sigan. Just superstition. We take the idol, get out of here, and sell it in the city. Do you know how much gold is worth? Tand hesitated. What if we get caught? We won't, Chidi assured him. We'll do it quietly. No one will know. The two men exchanged uncertain glances, but Chidi's confidence was infectious. Greed glimmered in their eyes. And so, just before midnight, the three men crept through the sleeping village, their footsteps silent on the packed earth. The shrine stood at the edge of the clearing, its wooden doors closed tight. Chidi took a deep breath, then pushed them open. The idol sat there, gleaming in the dim light. A sudden gust of wind rushed through the village, rattling the huts and sending a chill down their spines. Chidi hesitated for only a second before grabbing the idol. The moment his fingers closed around it, the wind stopped. The village was silent. Too silent. Baba Okon's eyes snapped open from within his heart. He sat up, his breath coming fast. Something was wrong. The spirits were awake. And they were angry. The night was eerily still. Chidi clutched the golden idol in his hands, its surface warm against his skin. Behind him, Sigan and Tand stood frozen, their eyes darting around the dark village. Did you feel that? Tand whispered. Chidi scoffed, shoving the idol into his bag. You're just paranoid. Nothing happened. But something had happened. The village, which had been alive with the sounds of crickets, rustling leaves, and distant drums just moments ago, was now silent, too silent. Even the wind had died, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Sigan shifted uneasily. I don't like this, Chidi. Maybe we should put it back. Chidi shot him a glare. Are you mad? We've come too far. This idol is worth millions. By this time next week, we'll be in Lagos, living like kings. Before Sigan or Tand could argue, the air around them grew heavy, thick like smoke, though nothing burned. A deep, guttural whisper drifted through the village, a voice not meant for human ears. It is taken, and now it begins. Tand gasped. Did you hear that? Chidi shook his head, swallowing hard. It's nothing. Let's go. They turned to leave, but the path they had taken to the shrine no longer looked familiar. The huts that had stood in perfect rows now seemed twisted, their angles unnatural. The village itself seemed wrong. Where is the main path? Sigan hissed, spinning in place. We just came from there. Chidi's heart pounded. The village hadn't changed. But something was clouding their senses, twisting their perception. He refused to believe it was anything supernatural. We just need to get back to our huts and act normal, Chidi said, forcing himself to stay calm. Come on. They moved quickly, ducking between the huts, careful not to make noise. But with every step, the ground beneath them felt softer, almost like they were stepping on something breathing. The air smelled different too, no longer of earth and firewood, but of something ancient, something rotting. When they finally reached their hut, Sigan wasted no time sleeping inside. We shouldn't have done this, he muttered. We need to. Boom. A sudden, deafening knock rattled the door. Tand jumped back. Who is that? They held their breath. Another knock followed, slow, deliberate. Not the frantic pounding of an angry villager, but something worse. Something patient. Chidi gripped the idol tighter. No one say a word. Silence. Then, the voice came again, whispering, but somehow everywhere at once. You have taken what is not yours. Tand whimpered, his hands shaking. Baba Okon. Shut up. Chidi snapped. He took a deep breath, forcing his nerves down. We stay inside until morning. Whatever this is, it's just a mind game. The knocking stopped. The three of them exchanged uneasy glances before sinking onto their bamboo mats, unwilling to admit how terrified they truly were. The morning after. The village was back to normal when the sun rose. Women carried baskets of yams on their heads, children chased each other, and men gathered near the marketplace. It was as if the night's horrors had never happened. Chidi stepped outside, relieved. See. Nothing happened. Sigan, still pale, frowned. You didn't hear that voice? Maybe it was just the wind, Chidi said quickly. Look, let's just act normal. We'll leave soon. As they made their way toward the communal area, a murmur rippled through the villagers. Baba Okon stood in the center of the gathering, his eyes scanning the crowd. His face was grim, his jaw set in a hard line. Something has been taken from us, he announced. The spirits have spoken. The balance has been disturbed. The villagers gasped, their eyes darting toward the NYSC members. Amaka, sensing the rising tension, stepped forward. Baba, what do you mean? The old man turned his gaze to her, his expression unreadable. There is a great curse upon this land now. Unless the one responsible comes forward, we will all suffer. Tant tugged on Chidi's sleeve, whispering, we need to return it. Chidi clenched his jaw. If they returned the idol now, their involvement would be obvious. He couldn't risk it. Baba Okon continued, his voice low. The spirits will not wait forever. The one who has taken the idol will pay the price. The air around them grew heavier again, and the villagers shuffled nervously. Then, suddenly, a scream. It came from the outskirts of the village. Everyone turned. A woman ran toward them, her face twisted in horror. Come quickly. The crowd rushed after her. Chidi, Sigan, and Tant followed, their stomachs twisting with dread. When they reached the scene, the air reeked of decay. A man lay on the ground, his body stiff, his eyes wide open in terror. His skin had turned an unnatural shade of black, like he had been drained of life itself. His mouth was frozen in a silent scream. The villagers gasped in horror. Baba Okon knelt beside the body, his fingers hovering over the man's chest. It has begun, he whispered. He looked up, his piercing gaze locking onto Chidi, Sigan, and Tand. The spirits have found their first victim. Chidi's breath came fast. His hands trembled. This wasn't coincidence. This was real. And it was only the beginning. The dead man's lifeless eyes burned into Chidi's mind. The villagers whispered among themselves, their voices trembling with fear. Mothers pulled their children close, men clutched their charms, and even the birds in the trees seemed to sense the weight of something unnatural pressing down on the village. Baba Okon stood slowly, his aged bones creaking, but his gaze was sharp as a knife. His wrinkled face held no doubt, no hesitation. He knew what had caused this. The spirits have warned us, he said, his voice low and steady. And now they have taken their first soul. The villagers turned their eyes toward Chidi, Sigan, and Tand. The three young men stiffened. We need to go, Sigan muttered, barely moving his lips. Chidi forced himself to breathe. Not yet. If we run, they'll know it was us. Tand's hands trembled at his sides. They already suspect us, Chidi. We need to return the idol before more people die. Chidi shook his head. No. We wait until dark. If we go back now, we'll be caught. Baba Okon raised a hand, and the villagers quieted. His eyes swept over the crowd, searching, judging. The one who took what does not belong to them must return it, he said. Or the spirits will claim another life before the next sunrise. The villagers murmured, fear lacing their voices. Chidi clenched his fists. He wouldn't be scared into confessing. No one saw them take the idol. If they kept quiet, they could still get away. Baba Okon's gaze lingered on them for a moment longer before he turned to the crowd. Prepare for the ritual tonight. We must beg for mercy. With that, the villagers slowly dispersed, leaving the corpse behind as a chilling reminder of what was coming. The curse spreads. That night, the air in the village was different. It was thick, wrong, like something unseen had slithered into every corner, every hut waiting. The villagers gathered in the center, torches casting flickering shadows over their faces. They sang prayers, their voices trembling with desperation. Baba Okon stood before a fire, his staff planted firmly in the earth, his lips moving in silent chants. Chidi, Sigan, and Tan stayed inside their hut, waiting for midnight. Tan paced back and forth, his forehead slick with sweat. We are cursed. We should have never taken that thing. Sigan sat on the floor, his head in his hands. We need to return it. Now. Chidi shot them both a glare. You think sneaking into the shrine in the middle of a ritual is a good idea? Do you know what they'll do if they catch us? Turned to him, his eyes wild. Do you know what will happen if we don't? A sudden scream outside made them all jump. They rushed to the door and peered out. A woman was kneeling beside another body, a young man, eyes wide open, his skin the same unnatural shade of black as the first victim. Another life taken. The villagers erupted in cries of horror. Chidi's breath caught in his throat. It was real. The curse was real. And it was getting worse. The truth comes out. Baba Okon turned to the crowd, his face grave. The spirits grow angry. He paused, then added, his voice heavy with warning, they will not wait much longer. Silence fell. Then, a voice rang out. It was them. Chidi's blood ran cold. Slowly, he turned his head. Amaka. She stood among the villagers, her eyes locked onto him, Sigan, and turned. You three, she said, stepping forward. You were near the shrine last night. I saw you. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Chidi opened his mouth to deny it, but Sigan snapped. Yes, we took it, he cried, his voice breaking. But we were going to return it. Tan's knees buckled, and he sank to the ground, covering his face. Chidi felt the weight of 100 eyes on him. His mind raced. They had been caught. Baba Okon stepped forward, his face unreadable. Bring them to the shrine, he said. Now. Hands grabbed them before they could resist. The shrine's wrath. The walk to the shrine was suffocating. Villagers surrounded them, torches lighting the dark path. The jungle whispered in the night, but no crickets chirped, no birds called. The shrine loomed ahead, its ancient stones gleaming under the moonlight. The entrance stood open, gaping like the mouth of something waiting to swallow them whole. Baba Okon entered first, his staff tapping against the ground. The villagers forced Chidi, Sigan, and turned forward, stopping before the empty pedestal where the idol had once stood. Baba Okon turned to them. Return it. Chidi hesitated, his hands trembling as he reached into his bag and pulled out the golden idol. The moment it left his hands, the air shifted. The torches flickered violently. The ground seemed to vibrate beneath their feet. Then, the whispers came. Low. Ancient. Inhuman. The villagers gasped. Some clutched their charms. Others fell to their knees, praying. Baba Okon stepped closer to the idol. He traced the air above it with his fingers, muttering incantations. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a gust of wind tore through the shrine, howling like a wounded beast. The torches went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. Chidi couldn't breathe. His body felt paralyzed. The whispers grew louder, angrier. Then, just as suddenly as it had come, the wind stopped. The torches relit themselves. And standing in the center of the shrine, where no one had stood before, was a figure. Tall. Shadowed. Eyes burning like embers. It spoke, its voice a guttural, hollow echo. The debt has not been paid. Chidi's heart stopped. The spirit was still angry. And it wanted more. The shrine stood in eerie silence. The villagers clutched their charms, trembling in fear. The figure in the center of the shrine, tall, shadowed, and not of this world, stared at Chidi, Sigan, and turned with burning ember eyes. Baba Okon, gripping his staff, stepped forward with slow, deliberate movements. He lowered his head in reverence and spoke, his voice steady. "Great One, we have returned what was stolen. Spare us your wrath." The spirit did not move. The air thickened, pressing down on them like unseen hands. When it finally spoke, its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "A debt paid in fear is no payment at all." Chidi felt his stomach turn to ice. "It was not our intention to anger you," Baba Okon continued. "These young men were foolish, but they have come to make amends." The spirit tilted its head, considering. Then, it raised one skeletal hand and pointed directly at Chidi. "Foolishness does not undo what has been done." Chidi's throat tightened. His heart pounded like a drum. "We didn't mean," he started, but the spirit's voice cut through him like a blade. "Silence." Chidi's lips snapped shut. The torches flickered wildly as if the very air inside the shrine had come alive. The villagers murmured prayers under their breath. Then, the spirit moved. Not in a way that flesh and bone should move. One moment it was standing still, and the next, it was right in front of them. Sigan yelped and stumbled back. Tan squeezed his eyes shut, whispering frantic prayers. Chidi couldn't move. The spirit loomed over him. Shadows clung to its form, shifting like restless smoke. "You have taken from us," it said, "now something must be taken from you." Chidi's body broke into a cold sweat. He knew what that meant. It wanted a life. The villagers gasped in horror. Some turned away. Others clutched their children, shielding their eyes. Baba Okon's voice was grave. "There must be another way." The spirit was silent for a moment. Then, it spoke again, its voice curling around them like smoke. "A life has already been taken. Another teeters on the edge. But the true debt remains unpaid." Chidi's breath hitched. "Another teeters on the edge?" His stomach twisted. His mother. She had fallen sick ever since they stole the idol. She had grown weaker by the day. This was because of him. The spirit turned, gliding across the shrine. It stopped before the pedestal where the golden idol had been placed once again. "There is only one way to break the curse," it said, its voice echoing. Chidi's pulse roared in his ears. "A sacrifice." The words hung in the air, heavy as stone. The villagers gasped. Someone sobbed. Chidi's vision blurred. His body felt like it wasn't his anymore. A sacrifice. Did that mean him? He tried to speak, but the words lodged in his throat. Baba Okon took a slow breath. His expression was unreadable. "What sacrifice do you ask for?" The spirit's ember eyes flickered. "The blood of the thief, or the blood of the innocent?" The shrine fell into suffocating silence. The meaning was clear. Either Chidi, Sigan, or Tan must die, or the curse would continue to claim the lives of the villagers. A bitter, ugly fear clawed at Chidi's chest. The villagers turned toward them. Their eyes were no longer just filled with fear. Now there was anger. They had suffered. They had lost two of their own. And now they knew who was to blame. Someone shouted, "Make them pay." Another joined in. "They brought this on us." More voices rose. "Let the spirits have them. They took the idol, they should suffer." Baba Okon raised his staff. "Enough." His voice echoed through the shrine, silencing the mob. He turned to Chidi, Sigan, and turned. His gaze was heavy with judgment. "You brought this evil upon us," he said. "You must decide." Chidi's breath hitched. "Decide? Which one of you will pay the price?" Baba Okon's voice was unrelenting. Chidi turned to his friends. Sigan's face was pale, his lips pressed together so tightly they looked bloodless. Tand was shaking, his eyes darting between the villagers and the spirit, his breath coming in short gasps. No. No, this couldn't be happening. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. His mother was dying. People had already been killed. And now, one of them had to die. Tan suddenly grabbed Chidi's arm, his grip like iron. "We run." Chidi barely had time to react before Tan shoved Sigan, snapping him out of his trance. "Run." The three of them bolted. The villagers screamed in fury. Hands reached for them. Someone grabbed Chidi's tunic, but he twisted free, stumbling forward. They dashed past the shrine, into the jungle. Behind them, the spirit's voice echoed through the trees. "You cannot escape the price of greed." A gust of wind slammed into them like a physical blow. Chidi tumbled forward, hitting the ground hard. His breath whooshed out of his lungs. Leaves rustled. Shadows twisted. Then, a scream. Not from the villagers. Not from Chidi. From Sigan. Chidi scrambled up. "Sigan!" Tand gasped beside him, his eyes wide. "No, no, no, no." Chidi followed his gaze. And felt his blood turn to ice. Sigan was gone. In his place, only the jungle remained. The trees stood undisturbed, the leaves swayed gently in the wind. There was no sign of struggle. No footprints. No body. Only the whisper of the spirit's final words. "The debt has been paid." Chidi's heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear his own breath. Sigan was gone. Just gone. And the curse was lifted. But at what cost? The jungle was eerily silent. Chidi's body trembled as he stared at the empty space where Sigan had been. The air around him felt colder, heavier. His ears rang with the spirit's final words. "The debt has been paid." Tand was on his knees, his breathing ragged, his eyes wide with disbelief. He's gone," he whispered. His voice cracked. Just like that. Chidi swallowed the lump in his throat, but it did nothing to stop the burning in his chest. Sigan. His friend. The one who had laughed with him, schemed with him, stolen with him. Now, he was nothing but a whisper in the wind. Chidi forced himself to stand, his legs weak beneath him. We have to go back." Tand whipped around, his face twisted in shock and rage. "Go back? For what?" "Sigan is gone, Chidi. We did this. We got him killed." Chidi flinched. The truth of Tand's words struck like a blade to his gut. Yes. They had done this. They had stolen the idol. They had brought the spirit's wrath upon their village. And now they had lost Sigan. The weight of it crushed him. "We can't just run," Chidi said, though his voice was barely more than a whisper. "We have to face them. Tand let out a bitter laugh, running a shaking hand over his head. Face them. Are you insane? They wanted to kill us back there. Do you think they'll just let us walk back into the village? Chidi didn't have an answer. But he knew one thing. He couldn't keep running. Not anymore. With a deep breath, he turned toward the village. And walked. Tand cursed under his breath but followed. The village was waiting for them. As soon as they stepped past the trees, people swarmed them. Shouts rang through the air. Where is the third one? What have you done? Murderers. The anger was thick, a storm ready to explode. Chidi and Tand stood frozen. Then Baba Okon stepped forward. His aged face was unreadable. His wise eyes, however, held something else. Judgment. But also understanding. He raised his staff, and the crowd fell silent. Where is the other? He asked. Chidi's throat tightened. Gone. A murmur rippled through the villagers. Baba Okon nodded slowly. He closed his eyes for a brief moment before turning back to the people. The spirit has taken what was owed. The curse is lifted. Some sighed in relief. Others glared at Chidi and turned with barely restrained fury. Then the elder fixed them with a hard stare. You must answer for your crimes. They were brought before the village council. Chidi and Tand knelt before the elders, their heads bowed. The weight of the villagers' gazes pressed upon them. Baba Okon spoke first. You have brought suffering to your people. 2 lives were lost to your greed. What do you have to say for yourselves? Chidi's lips parted, but no words came. What could he say? That he was sorry. That he regretted it? Nothing would bring back the lives lost. So instead, he said the only truth he knew. We were wrong. Tan's head snapped toward him, but he didn't interrupt. Chidi clenched his fists. We were blinded by greed. We thought we could take what wasn't ours without consequence. We deserve whatever punishment you give us. The elders murmured amongst themselves. Then Baba Okon raised a hand. You will not be put to death, he declared. A hushed silence fell over the crowd. Chidi dared to lift his head. But the elder continued, you will spend your days repaying what you have taken. He turned to the villagers. Let them rebuild what was lost. Let them work, let them serve. They will know the cost of greed through their hands and sweat. A long silence stretched between them. Then, one by one, the villagers nodded in agreement. And so, Chidi and Tand worked. Day after day, they labored under the sun. They rebuilt the damaged shrines. They carried water, tended to crops, mended homes. They served those they had wronged. But nothing weighed heavier than the memory of Sigan. Chidi saw his face in his dreams. Heard his laugh in the wind. And every day, when he passed the shrine where they had first stolen the idol, he bowed his head in silent repentance. Time passed. Seasons changed. And though the wounds remained, the village healed. One day, Baba Okon came to Chidi as he worked. The old man studied him for a long moment before speaking. Have you learned, child? Chidi met his gaze. And nodded. Yes. The price of greed was never gold. It was never wealth. It was the lives it consumed. And for the rest of his days, Chidi never forgot it.